Hello and welcome back. Welcome to another video about Saturn. I'm doing a series. First of all, I'm Veerle de Bruyne, and I'm doing a series now about Saturn. Saturn together with the personal planets in an aspect. And this one is about Mars. So I'm going to have a look at the natal chart, then at the transits, Mars-Saturn, and then Synastry. What does it mean? And with the natal chart, I just want to specify that no, I'm not talking at all of the time of a conjunction and then an opposition and then a square and then a sextile. I'm talking about any contact between Mars and Saturn. So that can indeed be a conjunction. That can indeed be the more challenging aspects of the square and the oppositions. And it can also indeed be the more easy aspects of a sextile and a trine. But let's get started with explaining the energies of Saturn and Mars. In traditional astrology, the two malefics. What is this all about? Saturn, as I said in the other videos, is about discipline, it's about hard work, it's about time, it's about delays, it's about restrictions, and it's more than that, but that's the most important thing. It's also about fears in a negative thing. In a positive thing, it's about working hard and therefore achieving the fruits when you do work very, very hard. That's Saturn. Mars is the planet of our ego. It's a planet of action. We all have Mars in our charts, and some of us know how to handle Mars in a very efficient, assertive way, confident way, and others go over the top. And also others can just not even start with their actions. And Mars is there to it's our drive, it's our desires, it's our sexuality as well. Although I think in a chart it's more than just Mars. It's also other planets. But anyway, it's our drive, it's the way that we act, it's the way that what do we do when we want to achieve something? And of course, it's in its own jacket of the sign it is in. So someone with Mars and Aries will be much more going forwards or wanting to go forwards than someone with Mars and Pisces, for instance. They also will get what they want, but they'll do it in another way. And when Mars is going to connect with Saturn, it also means something. If you mix those two planets, you already start probably understanding what this is all about. So, and as I said, even if you have a trine between Mars and Saturn, you will recognize the energies that I'm going to talk about, but it will be more gentle, it will be more fluently, those energies. Because you can understand Mars is a planet that wants to go forwards, and Saturn is saying, is the father. Saturn is saying, are you sure? Hang on a minute. Saturn is really a controlling planet. So everyone who's got a connection between Mars and Saturn, there's something about control, there's something about a lesson of mastering your actions. There's something about feeling restricted every now and then when you want to do something. There's something about not being easy for you, especially when you were younger. Your desires to be fulfilled, and the things that you're doing, that you're initiating, because Mars is the initiator. Mars is the one who says, I like this man, I'm going to speak to him. That's your Mars. Mars is, I want to do videos, I want to spread information about astrology. Mars is what makes me sit here and putting my camera there and doing the action. And Saturn is delay, is restricting, is making it a bit difficult for you. And of course it's not there to make it difficult. It means that there is this lesson that needs to be learned about you becoming more efficient in your actions. And what is becoming more efficient? Becoming more efficient is that, first of all, you master your actions and you do it in a proper, efficient, assertive way. So this is without fear, because a lot of people with Mars-Saturn, they have the fear of doing something, and that can relate to their youth. Maybe they did things that their parents said, no, you can't do that, or they become insecure because nothing happened when they did actions, or they were ridiculed or whatever. On the other hand, it can be overly Mars. I've seen that also with Mars and Saturn in a connection. They are, because of the insecurity that is involved here about the actions, this is Saturn, you overdo it. You overdo because you are actually fearful. So you are showing too much of a Mars, and therefore you're also not getting what you want. So a lot of people, especially with the hard aspects, so I mean, like the opposition, for instance, is absolutely not an easy. It's not an easy aspect. Mars and Saturn, it's not my favorite aspect to see. But there's some good things as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But Mars and Saturn in an opposition is really tough, especially for a man, because it's male energy, Mars, and Saturn is father energy. And I'll talk about in a minute for women as well, but with a man, Mars opposing Saturn, it means that every time he wants to do something, he's blocked, he's restricted. And then, because it's in an opposition, he can choose for either one of the planets. So if he chooses for Mars, he overreacts and he goes too much pushing. And then, because it's in an opposition, often it is projection that you see if you are not aware of this. And what does it mean? It means that you do something and it's always the outside world that reacts restrictive. So whether you want to start a new job, or you want to launch a new project, or you feel every time blocked because you are so too much of a Mars. And on the other hand, people with an opposition, they can be either, or at times they pick different roles. They can be too active and then they get this suppressing energy afterwards, or they become too fearful. They don't dare to do things, and to the extreme, and therefore they experience the outer world as pushy. Come on, isn't it time that you get a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever? So it's that energy, which is not easy at all, and the learning process is to balance these two energies into a very into adequacy of your actions, and also confidence in your actions, because a good confident Mars is someone that knows themselves. Knowing yourself is so important for Mars-Saturn aspects, because when you know yourself, you trust your own actions, and therefore you're also open to other people's actions. You don't fight them. You are efficient in what you do and confident, and therefore this is what these people learn. And of course, the fear of this inadequacy can actually make a person be motivated so much to overcome this, to overcome the obstacles, and actually, funny enough, become very successful. Of course, I only talk out of experience. I talk of not so much as what I read in the books. Of course, that's the basic, that's the theory. But what I see is really, it's the soul level of the person that decides what it does. You know, you can't judge when you see Mars-Saturn, ooh, this person is going to be cruel because it's, you know, this repressive energy, or this person is going to be depressed when it is too fearful to act. You can't really judge on that. The person decides how it's going to deal with that energy, but it's there. And in my experience, I've seen that people go to extremes. They go either the person of really fighting with these energies, as I just talked about, or being too scared of doing stuff, or being too violent. But I've also seen, as much as I saw the other ones, people who really, this is their most strengthful aspect in the horoscope, because they have pushed so hard to do something with this aspect. I've seen it a lot with people who, for instance, surgeons. I've seen it a lot in charts of surgeons, of course, because Mars is the sign of cutting and Saturn is focus. You see that this a lot with people who, doctors who are surgeons, who, of course, if you are a surgeon, you have to study tremendously long, don't you? So this is the Saturn, persistence, discipline. This is the positive side, by the way, of the Mars and the Saturn. Even if you have an opposition. I've seen surgeons with having this opposition, but still they continue, they do their studies, they do their super focus, because they're specialists, of course. So, in other words, if you can specialize in something, this is a good aspect to have, to specify on a specific area, because Saturn gives you that discipline, that persistence, and Mars is the control of your action. So that is I've also seen very good things happening with people having this aspect, but not without the effort, not without the time passing by and learning about this aspect. So it's not given to them just like that. I also have seen people with, let's say, a Mars-Saturn in the 7th house, which is about relationships. Like, let's say a conjunction. This is not easy. Let's say it's in Cancer, which is, I know someone like that. It's absolutely not easy, but this is not a bad person. But whatever relationship he starts, it's always a fight. It's always a struggle. But therefore, he learns something about asserting himself in a good way, not in a too, not reacting at all or reacting too much. And therefore, he's finding the equilibriums in this particular case, of course, because it's very important to see in which houses, which areas of life are activated. But it is a very demanding energy. I mean, demanding, if you see that in a chart, it pops out. You know, if you're doing charts, natal charts, what pops out is planets on the angles, but also something like a Mars and a Saturn that is like, even if this person has good Jupiter and a lot of softer aspects in his or her chart, it's always this working hard to get what you want. If you are a woman, it shows that you are a bit like Sun Saturn, that you are attracted to male men that have this authoritarian flavor. And of course that's part of you, because I don't always agree that Mars in a chart of a woman shows the kind of man she wants. It's more than that. It's also the Sun, and especially the aspects, not necessarily the sign. But with Mars and Saturn, there is a side, if you are a woman, there's a side of you that's very male-like, that's very authoritarian-like, and it can go either one way or the other. Or you feel suppressed by men, so that you attract men that are very dominant, and that you are the person that is not showing its energy. Maybe in an opposition that would happen probably, or it is possible. Or it can mean that you are someone like that, that you are quite tough and you are quite authoritarian or quite dominant, and therefore it's not always easy for you in a relationship. So therefore you need a man who can deal with this tough energy, who doesn't feel overruled by that, but it does in some cases, and now it's the exceptions, I'm not saying always, but the exceptions, there is this, if you find that in a natal chart, possibility for abuse when these people were younger, could have been Mars and Saturn has tendency of having in their youth some kind of abuse, whether it is sexual, but because of this authoritarian nature, there is this issue with domination, authority, also with sexuality, male or female, maybe problems there, problems of dominating, submissive, that kind of thing. And what it all boils down to is the insecurity, the feeling not adequate, or feeling that you might get punished in a way. So I think that goes back to other lives, basically, but it can probably, for most people, it goes back to their youth, that some parent or some person did something to them that they didn't have the tools, or they didn't have the energy to do something back. And that's why this aspect is so important for these people to learn how to assert themselves without overdoing it, and without not doing things at all. So I think that's the basic thing for an natal chart. So controlled action is positive. It's a focus of action as well. Hard work, long hours, in every profession where it needs, hard work. It can be a builder, who has this Mars-Saturn aspect, and living it out through the very hard work and feeling very, that's what this person is all about. It's ego. And that's the most important thing, I think. What in transits? Well, Saturn, and in a transit with, so if you're having a transit of Saturn over your Mars, whether it is a conjunction, or an opposition, or a square, that's the more challenging aspect, actually, or whether it is a trine or a sextile, which is the more positive aspect. But whatever it is, it will always have that energy of trying to go forwards and feeling that you are restricted. That's, in a nutshell, the Mars-Saturn energy. So when you're having a Mars-Saturn transit, and you are a person who, your character is a lot about, you are used to getting things done and doing it your way, and you are the initiator, and you deal with it. If you're having that character, that can be a very tough transit, because you're not used to it. You initiate and you're blocked in any way. So you probably feel frustrated. I haven't used that word, but that's also in the natal chart. It causes a lot of frustration with people. So doing things physically, by the way, is also very good for a Mars-Saturn person. So doing a lot of exercise or a lot of sports can be also very good to feel less frustrated, as that Mars finds its energy out. But in a transit, as I said, it can be a period of a year and a half, that you feel that whatever house it is in, area of life it is in, that you don't go forwards. Maybe it's happening in your 10th house, it's work, you're pushing and you're not getting anywhere, or you're not seeing the results. But it means that it needs time, or it means that fear is involved. And it also means to look at your own restrictions that you make, because Mars and Saturn is all about your own restrictions that you're putting on yourself. And whether this transit also is an opposite or a square, doesn't matter. It's about restrictions of your own actions. Dig a bit deeper. Why does this happen? Don't point the finger too easily to another person. Examine that, and there is a reason why things are delayed here. Maybe you're not ready yet. I've also seen it, Saturn and Mars, especially when Mars is the ruler of the chart, like Scorpio or Aries. It has something to do with your health, maybe, or operations, like that has to do with the bones or with the teeth. I've seen that a lot with Saturn and Mars there, that something happens with people, their teeth or their back, or Saturn is the bones, and So it can have to do with that as well. So in Synastry, it's not the kind of aspect that you're looking for, because you have to name it as it is. It's not the easiest aspect to have in a Synastry. The only way that it can be positive is when the person's Mars whose Mars is involved sees the Saturn person as a kind of a mentor and a kind of a teacher because that person's Mars feels that their Mars is not mature enough, and that person can help them to show their Mars in a more efficient way. But that's the exception. I think I've seen it in more couples that the one person whose Mars is involved feels very restricted. So in any action they do, they feel restricted by the Saturn person. And the Saturn person thinks, what crazy stuff this person here is doing. So that's in a nutshell, but the energy is of restricting one another and feeling frustrated. At its best, it's the passion between and the commitment between two people, and it's a deep involvement, but at its worst, it's violent. So that's another extreme. So don't think if you see that in a Synastry, violence. No, it's just the energy, and it can go to the extreme with that. I think with Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown and Rihanna and is it Chris Brown? They both had in Synastry Mars and Saturn. I don't know if it was a square or an opposition, but you know, and that was the nastier explanation of this Synastry. You know, no matter what other good things that you have in Synastry, you always have in Synastry, of course, look at the whole. But as I said, at its best, it's when the one wants to learn about the mastering of the other one. At its worst, it's frustration. And I think that's basically it. I don't have to, you know, it's very clear in Synastry. So these people can really bring out the worst in each other's lives. That is true. That's because of the Synastry. And of course, someone who has already in a natal chart this Mars-Saturn will attract probably a lot of people whose personal planets are falling on that Saturn or on that Mars in order for them to learn. That is another thing. But I've seen it a lot with people who are really, really trying to become more adequate in their actions, become stronger people. So Mars-Saturn is a controlling, the control of your action, the mastering of your action. So it can be used in a constructive way as well. It depends on the person. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, just post them below, and see you next time. Bye bye.